Hello, everyone, and welcome to the month of April. I am so excited to show you all the lineup of guests I have for this month. As many of you know me, I'm Gabriel Garcia, the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, and welcome to the very first author interview here on the show. Now, my first guest is a fellow author I met at last month's writer convention back in March. He is a creative who recently escaped from his corporate shackles of 8 years and is currently on the run with three cats and his wife in crime. Born in Long Beach and raised in Hawaii, his brain has been sun soaked on two different coasts, permanently damaging his sense of direction. And his favorite author is Pratchett, and he apologizes in advance for talking too much. He is a mystery game writer for Anzir Tech Games, game master for Magpie Games, event manager for Anime Expo Lounge 21, and volunteers for the American Red Cross as a disaster ready presenter. He has written stories about murdering unicorns, dystopian heroes with vegetable themes, and the horrors of office socializing. He once won an award for the poem Coat Regimentals, a success he has been unable to recreate since. And currently, he's been playing with the story idea about a little lost alien girl that the universe only sees as a galaxy ending abomination. It's a comedy. And to tell us all about that and more, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, fellow author, as well as future Audio Maze content creator, Pumi. Pumi, welcome to the show.
Hi, hello. Oh, you said everything I wrote you. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. You did a good job.
Thank you, Pumi. Thank you. So, before we dive into your work and your background, is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers and listeners? Anything that wasn't covered in the bio?
Well, I really want to share that I am a new writer. Like it was said in the bio, I recently quit my job of 8 years and am now, actually pursuing writing and creativity with all my heart and soul. And I gotta be honest, my bank account is terrible, but my soul feels so good. I really feel fantastic. Yeah. So forgive me for making any amateur mistakes, and I'm just happy to be on this journey with everybody around me. Yay, yay!
Awesome. That is
Nervous.
incredible for me. I'm very happy to hear that. And as a little teaser for our viewers and listeners, I know you're working on this story idea about this lost alien girl, and you're probably in the writing phase, drafting it. And I know you may not want to spoil it, but what can you give us as a little window into this future story you're working on?
Well, I okay. Well, I was inspired by this idea from all those games with the alien like unstoppable force, Tyranids, Zergs, so on,
Mm,
right? Devouring chitin claws and teeth. And I just thought it might be kind of interesting to write from perspective of like what happens in the after, you know, like what happens if that race found sentience or
mm,
individualism or some type of like uh individuality breaking free from like this one conscious society. And I thought be like how hard it would be for that person uh, to exist in a world that literally was almost destroyed by things that look like them. And
mm.
that's where that story was born from, and now I'm here.
Fascinating. That's actually really, really good because honestly, I don't get to see a lot of, there's so many, alien stories that we see in science fiction, but they tend to follow the same kind of plot, like in terms of like an alien invasion or the invasion's already happened and people are now just waking up to this simulation or reality, but never a story like this. And the fact that you say that it's a comedy, it automatically breaks the mold, which I can't wait to see when it does come out. So let's talk a little bit about the creative side of that for you in particular. So in your bio, you were born in Long Beach, but you were raised in Hawaii. So growing up, were you always a creative person? And if so, like, how did that come about? Was it through, like, your own experiences growing up, or maybe family, friends, or a particular individual that sort of sparked that creativity?
Well, I don't know if I was born this way or I was just, just weird enough that the weird gathered and rolled all together and just became a big ball of weird. But I do know that when I was really young, I wanted to be an inventor. Now I had a lot of these quirky ideas about how machines could work, what the world would need, what would be fun. And from there, I learned that words can invent anything.
That's
You
true.
put down a word on a paper, that's a thing now.
That is very, very true, Pumi. Absolutely. And I know you mentioned earlier that, you made a decision to quit your job to pursue your passion for writing. Would you consider that your aha moment to really transform this passion into a potential career, or was it something else entirely?
Well, actually, I think the aha moment came in high school. I think the first time where I wrote this funny little like story about I think it was like a storm, and like there I used sound effects, and
Mm.
my teacher loved it, and they said, "Wow, she didn't say this exactly, but she kind of implied, I didn't know you can do this. Look at this, you actually have something here." And that continued in college, where another aha moment where I was working with other people, and the way I saw the world was just really different and weird, and people enjoyed that a lot. Um, I felt like I've always wanted to create stories, and I got lucky that the people in my life just gave me these moments, just these here, look at this, you can do
Mhm.
this. Quitting the work thing was just dropping the camel's back of like, I can't do this anymore, right? Like my
Mm.
work's getting nuts. My old job had to do with imports and exports.
Mm.
I gave a month in advance to my boss I was quitting, but as I was on the way out, things in imports and exports with the tariffs and stuff like that, it's getting pretty bad in there. So I felt like I dodged the bullet leaving. I got real lucky.
Wow.
Um,
Holy
yeah, so that was
mackerel.
yeah, that was an aha moment. That was like a, oh God, I need to get out moment.
That's that is very, very true. And it is a very important decision to, like, really take our passions and really build on careers, because it is, everyone says, like, oh, don't always chase your dreams, be realistic, but sometimes you can take your passions and dreams and make them into something that is sustainable. It is just a lot of hard work, dedication, and really understanding you know how you want to achieve it. And we will talk upon that in the business portion of the interview. But before we get to that, let's talk about you as a writer. Now, also in your bio, that you are a mystery game writer for Anzir Tech Games and a lot of other stuff too. So, how did that come about? And when you were writing for them, I don't know if you are still writing for them. How do you approach sort of your writing process in the sense of what are your goals whenever you're working on a project for them, as well as the promises you're making to your future readers?
I think for my writing process, um, I take a lot of joy in creating. And so there's these kind of and also challenges, right?
Mm.
I love challenging myself, whether it be in games, in life, and in my work. Um, and so I think when I write, I like to write something at first that I enjoy, right?
Right.
Like that's like first little hurdle. Like, is this fun for me? Is this kind of like a cool idea that I enjoy right now? Which is my little starting nugget. And then from there, I think, what like what is it that I'm making it for?
Mm,
Like, is this something that I want people to, like, get inspired by, and like, and get a call to adventure, or to see a new perspective? I like the idea of my work having kind of a meaning to it, right? More than just swords are clanging, ships are blasting, which is
right.
fun, and that would be a goal for somebody that I just want to entertain and delight. Um, but I enjoy, I like a little extra layer of just fun, which is another layer of fun for me and keeps me more motivated. Uh, I think motivation is a huge part of my writing process.
Mm.
Finding ways to keep motivating myself, either through, what am I writing for, what am I adding to it, or who am I writing to? Just more reasons to keep going.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head, whereas you have to have fun while you're writing, because if you're not passionate about what you're writing, your readers are going to pick up that sense, and you never ever want that. And sometimes, it is challenging, especially if you're tasked with writing a story in a genre that you're not comfortable in, you don't have any experience in, and you have to really do some research into figuring out, okay, what do people like about this genre or these types of characters? It's a whole learning process. That's why, as authors, we have our preferred genres, preferred styles of writing, which we will touch on later in the interview. So, from those motivations that you just listed, Pumi, as well as the stories that you've written, not only just for the company, but also in your personal life, overall, what has been like the feedback from family and friends who have read some of your work?
I mean, feedback from family and friends is always going to be a double-edged sword, right? Either they're going to be
Mm,
great because they love you and they're going to say it, or they're going to be like, I don't get it, and that's extra pain, because you're not writing for them. You have different experiences. Um, I, I think getting positive feedback from people is important. By the way, no matter where it's from, and people should still validate that and think. Sorry, my cats are fighting a little bit.
Oh, you're
Um,
perfectly fine. It wouldn't be an episode on the show if there wasn't some animal in the thing, so you're good.
hey, hey guys, come on. Sorry, I'm so embarrassed.
You're fine, Pumi.
No. So I want to stress this to your listeners, that even though someone says something nice, it doesn't mean it's meaningless, right? You
Mm,
have to take the good with the bad. You have to take the good with the bad, or else all you get is bad, and it's all you're going to see your work with. With that being said, I I do believe that getting reviews or critiques or feedback from your peers, from other writers, is way more valuable, right? I would highly recommend. I know we're not going to talk about this yet, but either join a writing group or be in some type of writing community where you can share your work with others who are in the same mindset. That's so important.
absolutely, 100% Pumi. And everything that Pumi said, viewers and listeners, is very, very true. You have to take the good with the bad, as well as also taking some reviews and critiques with a grain of salt, because reviews, they come in stages and layers. There are some reviews that are meant to be very critical, and then there are reviews that you have to think of, okay, well, you're only saying this because you know me, you don't want to hurt my feelings. And then there are the other reviews that are just cruel and harmful for the sole purpose of being just that. And that can be very detrimental to an author's mental health and their drive to keep going, which then leads to a very powerful reflective question, Pumi, which has, a lot of layers to it. So brace yourself for this one. So, as authors, as, writers, you said it perfectly well, Pumi, that, we definitely have to take the good with the bad. And as authors, when we create something, it's our baby. It's something that we've put a lot of time and
Yeah.
effort into that, whether that's, writing for company, writing for ourselves, and something in between. And with the rise of social media, with the publishing industry, that is also a double-edged sword, because on one edge you have a platform that can allow us authors and writers to connect with readers, and as you mentioned, writing groups to connect with other writers to build a good rapport with, and so forth. On the other side, we do leave ourselves exposed to these negativity, to hurt speech, to everything in between, and that could also be detrimental to an author's mental health, and again, make them reconsider whether or not they want to pursue this. And also, with all that said, imposter syndrome is always going to be in the back of every author's mind. And in my opinion, I believe that social media heightens it to the extreme and increases one's anxiety. So I'm curious, Pumi, on your own author's journey, have you ever had those moments of imposter syndrome and or heightened anxiety? And if so, or possibly if not, what has disciplined you to continue down this path?
Oh my God, absolutely imposter syndrome. There's not even just in my writing, but just in me as a person.
Mm.
Sometimes, I look at myself, I think, am I actually fun? Am I actually like a cool guy to hang out with? And then my wife has come around and was like, shut the fuck up, you're beautiful. What the hell are you talking about? Go back to bed. um, I'm very lucky to have really good people in my life that
Mm.
has, reminded me over and over again that not even that I have worth, but what I'm doing and what I've made has worth. Um, I actually, is it okay I ask you a question real quick? It's related
Oh,
to the topic.
yes. Actually, please, definitely.
I think this is our one of our first talks actually talking about the writing process together, and
Mhm.
I think I like the way you talk about it. Um, so, what do you think about bringing other people into the writing process early? I prefer kind of having a really core concept first, right? Kind of a foundational thing, and enough of it that it can weather being buffed around by other people's criticisms and talks. That way, I can still hold on to the core idea of it and continue onwards. But I was talking to my other writing friend, and he was telling me like I love collaboration, right? And like the sooner I can get people on with me, the sooner I can like get that momentum going and feel like fuel, right? When I'm getting feedback, even if it's just like a concept, not even a draft yet, he
Right.
like loves that. What do you think about bringing people early?
That's actually a really good question, Bhumi, and thank you so much for asking it, because it actually kind of correlates with what we would talk about much later. But yeah, in my opinion, I definitely think if you, especially if you're working on, let's say, your first book, and you really want to have like a good team with you, I've always found it helpful to find people early, even if you don't have an idea. Find people that you have like similar interests with, and I've had the opportunity to do that through these interviews. Most of the people in my close inner circle are people that I have interviewed on this show. And after we've learned more about each other and our own styles of writing, we built a great rapport. And that way I can always reach out to them saying, hey, I'm working on a project. I really need some feedback. I know you specialize in this genre, so I would really love
Mm,
your insight. So I definitely think before you even have an idea, just talk and just meet with people, because this form of networking is crucial and very, very critical. Because not just also authors, there can be people who are very good editors, people who are great artists, and from those people, you can build your own team. Because that's a huge thing for us authors, especially if you go down the way of indie authors. It's always great to have a team. Because for me, I have several beta readers, very loyal beta readers I can always call upon to proofread all my books. I have a good following of ARC readers that will be there to write the reviews. I have a talented editor from the UK who is, awesome. Shout out to Lori Ball. I have a fantastic character artist, Tom Romaine, who did incredible artwork for Decimus, The Wolf of Rome, which will be coming out later this year, as well as the independent company, Get Covers, which shout out to them. They are incredible. So to further answer your question, Pumi, definitely just start in the beginning, just meet people, network. Even if you don't have an idea, just connect and just talk and see, who's who, and this group that we can build upon. Does that kind of answer your question?
Oh yeah, that's freaking awesome. I love it. Already, as you were saying people, I was looking at the people in my life who I can flag for things, like a cover artist, a company that can be a good editor. I was like, damn, I've never had time to actually develop a team before. And to like, if I have a specific need or an idea, right, just to tap on someone's shoulder and it's like, can I pick your brain? Because I know you know this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love it. I'm still gonna do my core thing first.
Of course,
but
absolutely.
but I gives me more options, and that's what we all need.
Absolutely. And kind of as a fun question, Fumi, now here's mine to you. So, a previous guest of mine I had on the show, Charlie Jasmine Young, she posted on her Instagram many months ago that during the quarantine, the COVID lockdown years, those 4 grim years, it birthed a golden age of creators, whether that's musicians, artists, and authors, especially authors, because a lot of authors that I've interviewed on the show, I want to say even the last 2.5 years, have come about during COVID and quarantine. And this has kind of been a debate I've been asking my guests of whether or not the COVID lockdown years did birth a golden age of creators, specifically authors, or a golden age was already on the rise and just, the lockdown just accelerated. So, Pumi, what are your thoughts on this?
I think I think there was steps to a golden age in the process. I mean, I don't know how it is before my time, right? Because I don't know my time, but I felt like there was some really good writing starting to develop. Not
Mm,
even just TV shows like Breaking Bad, but with like animation, movies, scripts, YouTube.
yes.
Um, and I do think there was a golden age in the process. I think I would say that the pandemic really just like incubated it, right? It
Mm,
was a pressure cooker that forced people to like, hey, I'm stuck in this thing, and the only things I can do are this. I need to claw my way out, or I have things for cooking, and now I have the time because I literally can't do anything else, which was fantastic. But I want to be a little bit of a Debbie Downer on this aspect. I think the golden age of creativity is here. It's happening, right? We have so many creatives. It's more accessible than ever to like
yes.
bring your stories to life. Um, but I don't think it's. I think it might not be as viable as a life career thing currently. I kind of feel like the economy is not uh like has enough going on for it to weather creativity and weather entertainment in the more indie individual aspects, and that
Mm,
that money wise I feel like the landscape uh, is a bit more bleak, and it would be harder not to create it or for it to even be seen, but to have it be like, I don't know, uh, a financial success, I guess.
right.
But what do you think? I want to hear your opinions because I think you're more in the biz than I am.
Well, in my opinion, I emerged during the lockdown years. I was writing my books around 2019, 2020, like the early years. And I initially
Mm,
just wrote my books just to um, just pass through the monotonous days that I was doing my graduate studies. And, I did self publish The Gathering and then followed up with Aminus, but I really didn't have an idea of the business at the time. And, after meeting with other people and also doing my show and learning more, I really figured out, okay, this is what I want to do, because that's where I learned about, ARC readers and actually
Mm.
getting my books are already edited, but I wanted to get like a second opinion. So I had them re-edited again. And then after which, really understanding, how am I going to market it, because social media, it's probably the biggest thing when it comes to authors, is really marketing one's book, like making posts every now and then. And that's also how I made my newsletter for the channel, promoting my books wherever I can. And it's been a process, and it's also been a reflection as to, again, the kind of authors we want to be, which now leads into my favorite segment of the interview, the business side of being
Yay!
an author. So, Pumi, I now turn this over to you. So, as authors, we have our preferred styles of writing, but also people we want to write to. Now, whenever we're writing our own stories, we genuinely think of ourselves as the audience, because we know the story better than anyone else. But when we make the decision to share it, as well as potentially publish one's work, we really have to consider our audience and who exactly that is. So, in terms of your writing and for your stories, do you have a good idea of your audience? And in your opinion, when should an author take into account their audience? During the initial drafting phase, or during the initial publishing phase when they make the decision to publish it?
Hmm. Well, when I write, I like to write for help. It helps me, right, to have an
Mhm.
idea first, and then see where I can slot it into a certain genre. Which I know people might say, "Hey, that's limiting your initial idea from the get go." But for me, I think limits breed creativity, and it's just more fun. Because like, just because I slot it in a certain genre doesn't mean that it needs to stay there, right? I can bleed
Right.
over, I can twist it, I can it just gives me another path. So that for me it's kind of early on where I'm gonna place it. And also the kind of content um I like to think about who will be interested in this as
Mm.
well. Kind of relating to oh, the audience that reads Terry Pratchett might be interested in this, or oh, people who know about sci-fi and about like alien invasions, and have ever wondered what would it be like to live in the aftermath. That'd be
Right.
great. Or dystopian writers who have read all the heroine stories, that the perfect chosen one. Like, wouldn't it be fun if they were just a mess?
Right.
Um, so for me, it comes pretty early on. And remind me second part of that question.
I think the second part was, so you already said, like, in your opinion, when should an author take into account their our audience, which you did. And the other part was, for you, do you have a good idea of who your audience is?
Oh, okay. I I'll be honest. I don't. I'll be real with you. I think it's hard for me to conceptualize my actual audience. It's easier for me, which it might sound the same, but it's actually different in my brain. That I'm writing for somebody, and that there's somebody who would actually read it.
Right.
So, um, I can't help that the people who would want to read my writing be a bunch of weirdos, and and who like black humor and comedy. Um, I I don't know how many of them there are in the world, but I know that's who I want to write for, right? Um,
Absolutely. And as an add on to that, I'm also very interested in always asking my guests readership. Because, in my opinion, I think the readership is probably the most difficult to write
yes.
towards in terms of the audience. And what I mean that by that, viewers and listeners, well, in the publishing world, we're always taught and drilled into us that the audience, the large group of people, that is who we are tasked with writing towards. And yes, that is very true. But when we look at the individual people, the readership, that is important. In the publishing world, there are four. There's middle grade, YA, NA, which stands for new adult, and AF, which is adult fiction. And each of those readership groups has a set of rules that authors have to follow and obey, as well as types of stories that follow those rules. And it is a challenge. It is very, very difficult because generally, for us, or at least for me, I write adult fiction. I don't write middle grade. I don't write young adult, and I don't write noodle. I just write adult fiction. But I know everyone is not like that. Some people write in YA, middle grade, sometimes NA, and it is a challenge. So, Pumi, for your writings and for your stories, where do they fall under in this readership category? And what have been the difficulties of writing with that perspective readership in mind?
Well, I believe I write new adult. To me, that feels more accessible, right? I feel like I have a lot more freedom and
Mm,
also can touch upon more mature tones or like ideas and concepts. I don't want to go
right.
overboard, of course, but like at least it's there. But I'm gonna say this, and this might flash my ignorance. I do not know there were rules that we were supposed to not do for this fiction. I just thought it was the audience kind of age and like what they would like. So after this is over, I am going to Google rules for new adults, just so that I'm not breaking things.
Okay, well, the saving part of that, of what I meant by rules in terms of like the type of stories that are allowed under Nudo, as well as in terms of like languages and themes, because as we will touch on later, there are some stories that are marketed towards
Yeah.
a specific readership or group, but when you read them, you realize this needs a second revision. This is not YA. This is new adult or adult fiction. And I've had a lot of editors talk about, those experiences, as well as several authors who have coined, or have not coined, but have mentioned that it is integral to really understand what category, what readership you are actually trying to market to. Not the audience, like the fantasy audience or the thriller audience, but the readership, the actual people who are going to pick up your books, which, that comes with a lot of trial and error. But this also leads to the discussion of the individuality of an author. So, Pumi, I now turn this over to you again, which is whenever you were writing your own stories, whether it's for the company you're writing for or your own private writings, what has been the challenges, so to speak, of balancing your individuality through your writing to showcase you as the author, but you also want to show respect and reverence to the books of
Yeah.
the past and the authors of the past? Because, as authors, we don't want to imitate or replicate someone else's thought process, but we do want to write something that is familiar to authors of any genre that we are writing to.
I I'm gonna say that actually I'm gonna say pretty much all of my professional writing experience has been writing in other genres for companies with kind of like narrow scoped ideas of what they want.
Right,
Yeah, game companies, a certain dialogue needs to sound a certain way,
right.
um, or even with my office job of how emails and notes need to be as well, pretty regulated, and that has been a struggle for me specifically.
Mm,
I have a very unique way of speaking and unique way of writing. And it's abundantly clear when I am the one drafting notes or this is my, segment for this, character's adventure, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
that's his fingerprints are all over it. And it's good, right? It's good for my individual works, but it's bad, I think, for meshing with an overall like idea and tone. And
Mm,
I've worked very hard to kind of like not curtail my voice, not to hold back my voice, but to shape it in a way that is still like uh still stitched with as a whole. And to me, that kind of applies to genre in general, right? I
right.
think there is like high fantasy, high fantasy fiction sounds like a certain thing. It has a certain
Right.
flow, a certain language, and I think it's important to either abide by that or be purposeful if you're not, right? If you're going to use
Mm,
modern language in a fancy setting, then you need to be consistent with that and make it like you need. I think modern language in a fantasy setting is okay, right? If you're especially if you're doing like something funny or comedy, but I would hesitate in recommending it. You know, I
mm.
I think that I think fantasy, sci-fi, mystery, horror, there's an expectation for a reader, and if you break it too much without setting yourself up for first, giving the reader a chance to trust that you know what you're doing, then I think you're gonna lose them or they're gonna have complaints. But yeah, once again, what do you think?
No, it's actually, what you said, Pumi, is, very, very true. And I don't think, I think a lot of my guests would definitely agree with you that there is an expectation when it comes to these genres. Absolutely. Like, case in point, when you talk about fantasy, my book, Michael, Last Angel of Earth, you would
Oh, hell yeah.
classify that as more of, yes, it is a high epic fantasy story, but it's set in the modern world, a very dystopian world. There is a lot of references to, the past. There's not really like a language that I developed because I realized I'm not that creative like my other friends who are able to develop a language, but the lore that is in this universe is very rich. And that is, again, an homage to the high epic fantasy stories of the past. And again, each of those genres has an expectations of how the story is supposed to go, not in terms of just the plot, but just the language. Like, how are the characters going to be introduced? How is the world going to be introduced, and so forth? Because the world development of a high epic fantasy story is not the same as a world that is created in a thriller noir set of
Yes.
stories. It is vastly different. And again, that just comes through a lot of trial and error, as well as making connections with other authors who specialize in that genre, who can give you tips and tricks and just building a good rapport. Now, before we touch on that, I did want to touch on something that was mentioned earlier in the introduction, viewers and listeners. Now, before we get into this, if you did not see the post, Audio Maze is officially live and has launched on April 1st. It is not a joke. I know it was on April 1st planned, as if in the event that it didn't, we could say April Fools, but no, Audio Maze has officially launched, and we are excited to showcase all the authors we have lined up. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is Pumi was able to join one of our author meet and greets to really understand Audio Maze, as well as connect with various authors. So, Pumi, can you tell us about that experience and, in your opinion, how Audio Mazes stands out from other companies that you have seen and possibly have worked with?
Oh, I mean, to be honest, when you approached me for Audio Maze, I had a lot of like, what is this? What is this about? Right? I don't know. Who is this? Who's this guy? But sitting through the meeting, just listening to what's on the horizon and how the process is, the vibe was immaculate. Like I was so inspired by just listening and talking and hearing like what the vision was, that I just started writing immediately myself. Um, I, I love it. I love the idea of like making these stories and having all these like ideas and the collaboration potential to bring the story alive in a way that's like, different. You
Hmm.
know, to have those voices, the sound effect, to have almost like a full-on production for
Right.
something you've created. That is so cool, and I can't wait to like. And it also for I'm speaking specifically for writers, right?
Right.
But I know there's a lot of awesome potential for narrators and sound designers and just so much creativity that can be packed into each piece. But for writers specifically, I think this is a chance to really view your story, your craft differently, right? There's
Hmm.
I love to write with like really fun prose. That's kind of like my go-to thing.
Right.
Um, and I think with this audio maze, the prose is of course super important. But now you can, when you're writing it, you can imagine how the battle will sound like, right?
Right.
How the horns of the reinforcements coming in would feel the tremble of hooves, or and I think that can add so much more to your scenes, right? I think when you write now, when you write with the idea that every piece of it is going to be viewed, examined, and maybe come to life, like I think naturally your writing is going to be just as vibrant. Which is why I was super excited, and also it's gonna be super cool for the listeners too. Yeah, sure, they're gonna have a great time listening to all the cool stuff. But man, oh man, as a writer, man, what an opportunity!
Absolutely. And that, curtails probably a very important question, which I always ask my guests because it is, really important. And it is kind of like a hard pill to swallow. And it's just a topic of, building one's legacy and longevity in the publishing world. And just to give a little context of this question, Pumi, I don't know if I may have told you this when we first met, but I've been doing this show now for almost now 7 years. And in the process, yeah, I have had the opportunity to meet quite a lot of authors, editors, narrators, historians, professors, so forth. I think now I'm at 307 videos right now with 200 and something subscribers. It's a lot. And I never would have thought this would have been my career. But I've learned a lot from so many people, from everyone on different paths, different journeys, and different stages of their life, that I've come to the realization that for authors as well as for anyone else, there are two roads: to be something and to be known as something. And specifically for authors, to be an author is an individual dedicated to storytelling, not motivated by capital. But let's be honest, we would love if we can actually live off of our works. We would quit our jobs and join any
Yes,
writing group. Absolutely. And the second path, to be known as an author, is an individual dedicated to marketing, going on shows like these, getting their name out there, building their brand, and so forth. And ultimately, that is the end goal. But a lot of authors that I've talked to on the show have all agreed, especially for first time authors who are getting into this industry and possibly not doing enough research in, go down that second path because it's the most enticing, but leads to a lot of unrealistic goals and expectations. And here's the hard truth, viewers and listeners: this is not a get rich quick money scheme. You're not going to make money overnight. Would we all love that to be wrong? Absolutely. But the matter of fact is, that's not the case. And the hard truth to really take to heart is, in this industry, there is no guarantee your first book, your debut novel, or your debut series is going to be the start of your legacy. Now,
mm,
there are exceptions to that rule, of course. There are many authors that have risen to the status of award winning, and all the power to them. That's not an easy thing to do, especially if it's your first book. But generally speaking, you have highs and lows. and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, which is natural. But if you don't really do the research and really understand the realistic goals you have, you're going to lose your passion for writing and you may not want to write again. I've had a lot of authors talk about that as well, that they've had friends who've gone into this industry for the wrong reasons. So, Pumi, I turn over to you to hear your thoughts on this question and whether or not you agree that just because your book may not reach the status that you expect it to be, that shouldn't stop you from honing your craft to be a better author.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. And I also just want to add in to your listeners, um, please don't quit your day job. And I'll tell you why I did and why you shouldn't. Okay.
All right.
Um, First off, as we just mentioned, you're not going to make money, right?
Yes.
Don't dash the dreams of instant success, of a stable income, of just writing books in a nook with a coffee and just surrounded by cats and plants. That's a dream. It's a beautiful one, but that doesn't have to be your only reason to write.
Mm,
I truly believe writing makes you enriches your life, right? It makes you better at just things, at thinking. Um, and just to write, to create, it's a beautiful process that you should always pursue, even if you're not going to reach financial success, right? Your stories matter, no matter how many ears they reach, or how formed they are. They do matter, and they mean something, and the world is better with them in it.
mm.
And I actually do mean that, truly. Um, why I quit my job and just jumped into it. um, I I I had a very comfortable job. It paid well. I had great benefits, but I was deeply unhappy,
Mm.
and I tried to write on the side and do these things, but I found that I wasn't able to balance the both of them. It was either my job or my creativity. Um, Actually, let me check my creativity. My writing specifically, I can still be creative with my friends or with these little games I made. And I took a hard look at what kind of future I want, right? I thought about continuing down the path of my suit, my cubicle, the office, the 9 to 5. Where would I would end up, and if that's
Mm.
what I wanted. And I thought about the risks involved in not pursuing that, the instability, the huge chance of failure, the lack of time and benefits if I get a part-time job somewhere not as easy that I know. And I made a choice, and that's literally it. Like as the smart, safe decision is to keep your job, and I highly recommend doing that. But once in a while, you will have a choice placed in front of you, and you will need to decide what you would want. And sometimes what you want is not the safe choice. Sometimes it's risky, and it's up to each person individually if that's worth it or not. So you might see me on the streets one day, uh, and yeah. So I ask your readers to decide, right? And whatever you decide, pursue it full-heartedly, but to not give up on their writing. You know, Still make
Absolutely.
stories here and there, and wherever you can, either through D&D or poems or contests. Just always write.
Absolutely. And also, as I always say, grit transforms into talent. And it may
Mm,
be your 15th or 20th book that really gets your name out there. That's okay. Because when you do get that status that you do want, you can then say, hey, if you enjoyed this book, check out my other one to see my growth. And that leads now into what we've mentioned previously, but now we can fully talk about it, networking as authors, which is huge.
huge.
And, as Pumi mentioned, writing conventions, writers groups is very, very integral. And not I won't say it's a secret, but it is a pool of opportunity because that's actually how me and Pumi Man, we actually met at the California Writers Club in March, which is actually having an event which featured two guests that I've had on the show last year, Matt Conant and Lauren Kivolo. And that was awesome. So, Pumi, can you talk about, experience with the California Writers Club and why that is a great pool for networking as authors?
Well, that was actually my first meeting going. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's by far, so I've been a part of a lot of writing groups and communities in the
Mm.
past. And I think by far that was the biggest one I've been to. Had tons of members, and that wasn't even like the full like amount. And there was just like I've never been so like washed with opportunities to collaborate or to discuss, or people saying like, "Oh, that's a pretty cool story idea. I would love to read it." Oh, read my thing? Yeah. Um, I really think the Writers Club specifically is a great place to meet local writers in Southern California, and to really get connected. Um, and there's a wide range of ages, and I believe you can find your group there. With that being said, I do want to add in other ways that I've met other writers and other places for community.
All right.
Um, I think the first and most obvious is meetups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Online, meetups.com. That is a mixed bag, but I think it's still worth your time to go and see these things. Um, you might get a really small group of writers that are really dedicated and like, oh, hey, yeah, we really care. Or once in a while you get a bunch of weirdos or a single person there, and they're just a little bit too like talkative about their own works, and it's like I thought we were writing or something. But I think it's really worth it. Besides that, I think going online is fantastic. Through contests, a lot of contests, especially the bigger ones, have
Mm.
forums attached to it where you can, hey, this is what I wrote, and discuss and talk to things. And you can meet people online as well. Um, Besides that, I would not recommend just waiting in the library and hoping someone will see you write and be like, he's a writer, I'm a writer. Let's be best writing friends forever, right? Um, don't wait for your chance to make a community. Make the community. Reach out, talk, and if you're shy and if that's hard, that's okay. I think forums is a great place to just post and to see and to react. But with that being said, I'm very curious about this arc thing you've mentioned a couple of times.
So like ARC readers. So ARC readers are very, very important. So they're a little bit different from beta readers. So beta readers are, of course, individuals who we use to, review our work, but give us feedback that we can improve
Hmm.
upon the story. So for me, if you ever, once you've written your Alien Girl story and are deciding to publish it, I would definitely recommend definitely first beta readers to definitely get a different perspective and make the changes needed. Then editor, which is very important, and then ARC readers. ARC readers' sole job is to write reviews and post it on wherever it's going to be published, whether that's
Mm.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and ARC applications are very, very integral. That's what I did for Michael, and it was a huge success. A lot of people purchased, like I think about 14 or 24 copies of Michael
Oh, wow.
between like paperback and ebook. So that is something to consider down the road. And that's also through, having an application form to really see, okay, do I trust this person? Because that's another thing too. You really want to make sure you can trust the individual to not take your story and run it with it on their own. So that's another thing to really think. Like definitely from the group of people that you have a good rapport with. If you trust them enough to not only read your story, but also get like an advanced copy to then, I'm trusting you to read this. I want you to give me a review. Definitely be honest, but I am trusting you to not take the story and use it on your own. That's also very, very important. And with that said, are there any people you'd like to give a personal shout out to, Pumi, who have helped you on your journey as an author and writer? Any family friends, any fellow writers, or any
Yes.
other people, let's say, because I know we didn't talk about this before, but I know you also specialize or have done some dabbling in narration as well. So any other people you want to give a personal shout out to who have helped you along the way?
I got a good list of people I want to support. I do want to mention this before I forget, because it's the second time I forgot. Your Michael story is a awesome example of how to use modern like language and ideas in a high fantasy setting, because it would not make sense if it was just fantasies. If they talked like Game of Thrones in New
Right.
York or something like that, that would take me out of the story, because that would not make sense. So I just do want to shout out that fantastic idea. What a fun like little story, and where can I get my own copy? Um, with that being said, I do want to thank I want to thank my first and last reader, my wife, who is my pillar, my strength, and my worst and best critique. Actually, no, sorry, I'm my worst critique.
Mm.
She's my best. She's really fantastic. She has a fantastic mind, and I adore everything she says. Besides her, I shout out to my co-writer for a lot of different things, Mike Tran. We started as friends, and then we started as writing buddies, and now we write things together. He has gone a bit more corporate in his path, but whenever I have an idea or a nugget to like, I need another set of eyes with, he's my first person I go to. And then shout out to my audience reader, Aisha Favela. She is an avid book reader, and she only sees things from the reading side. So not a writer, a creative, but has very specific ideas about stories and if they're good or not. And I know she will keep me on my toes and keep it real. And she was the best ma'am at my wedding as well. Yeah.
Awesome, Pumi. That is incredible. So that's also you have a really good group of people that have helped you along the way, and possibly many more in the future. And as we near the final question of this amazing interview, Pumi, here it is. With everything you've learned thus far on your journey through your own struggles, your own obstacles, the highs and the lows, what is your word of wisdom to fellow authors and fellow writers listening and or watching this interview right now?
I mean, there's so much advice to give, but I'm just gonna say writing something, no matter how small or how terrible or how awful it is always better than writing nothing. Always, no matter what. So every day, just write something, even if it's just a sentence or just a single word. Write something. And yeah, that's it.
That is perfect, Pumi, and a perfect ending to this amazing author interview to start us off for the month of April. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for an amazing interview on the show. A huge thank you to my friend Pumi for coming on the show, making his official debut here on the channel. Pumi, thank you so very, very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Now, before we end, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out? And will you be at any conventions or any meetups in the month of April that people can possibly meet up with you and maybe just check you out and maybe just talk and just talk writing.
Well, me and my other friend are actually thinking about opening a little creativity shop called the Shop with No Name, which is like so we got some maybe conventions soon enough with fun and weird ideas about talismans, low fortune parchments. But
Ooh.
you can connect with me. That's not a writing thing, so I was trying to be quick. But you can connect with me on Instagram at Pumi, Pumi, dot Phipathanananth, which is a long name. I won't spell it out. And right now I will be posting just my life and my story about what's going on. And yeah, if you see me around the street, don't just stop by and say hi. Like, hey, I saw you on the internet. I will be very kind. Yeah, that's everything.
All right, I will link that down below in the description.
Oh,
Oh,
I want a signed copy of your. Sorry, the interview's not over yet. Bye.
no problem. Oh, you're fine. You're fine. But with all that said, viewers and listeners, I will post all that down below in the description of this video. And if you want to if you also want to meet me also in person as well, I'll also be at this month's California Writers Club meetup on Saturday, April 5th. And Pumi, will we be seeing you there as well?
Hell yeah.
All right, so that is another place to be able to find Pumi as well. So we will both be at the California Writers Club meetup, which if you go to their Instagram, you'll be able to find out exactly where we'll be meeting up. And if you find us, just reach out and just connect. We're approachable. We're very nice. And honestly, it's going to be amazing nonetheless. And also, while I won't necessarily be tabling, I will definitely be in the area. The Saturday after that, I'll be at Anacon, supporting local authors and creators there. So if you see me there, feel free to reach out, and definitely. And finally, I will also be at the LA Festival of Books on the 26th and the 27th. Again, I won't be tabling there, but I'll be there to support my fellow authors who I know are going to be there. So if you want to find me there, that is where I will be. And finally, if you also want to check out my first story with Audio Maze, be on the lookout because it is in post-production. And that is the Roman Rebel, which I don't want to give too many spoilers for it, but Roman Rebel is a time-traveling adventure where you find the main character, Isaias Baez, a boxer from New York, transported to ancient Rome, where he now must fight as a gladiator. And here is the cusp of this time-traveling phenomenon. It's 1 year before the infamous Spartacus rebellion. So readers will have the choice to whether or not aid Spartacus and change the fate of the rebellion or let history play out. And if you want to stay up to date, definitely click on the link for Audio Maze, which I'll post down below. And with all that said, viewers and listeners, thank you again for joining us for an amazing author interview here on the channel. A huge thank you to my friend Pumi. And until next time, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. This is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And until next time.